Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest on Storm Agnes, which should be slowly clearing over the next 12 hours. The biggest impacts were earlier today. We've still got some very severe impacts through the rest of this evening, but they are slowly reducing in intensity and in their widespread nature as the storm does start to fill in, i.e. pressure rises and the impacts and severity of the system start to reduce. Now have a look at what is going on the live radar at the moment. So we're still seeing lots of rainfall and some very strong winds. We'll have a look at the weather warnings as they still are in force over the coming hours. We'll have a look at some of the latest reported max wind gusts. Widely, we've seen 50, 60, 70 miles per hour, even over some high routes. We've seen up towards 80 miles per hour. And then we'll have a look at some of the long-range charts. Have a look at the UKV, look at the precipitation over the next precipitation and temperature over the next 5 days, see what the rest of September has in store, and then into the longer range, where we'll have a look at the various mid to long range charts, as there is the possibility of more of these very unsettled conditions, perhaps even more named storms to come as we head into October. High pressure has been starting to build on some of the runs over the last couple of days. We have thought high pressure could really make an appearance into early October. The models really are fluctuating between that. It's sort of at the moment looks like there'll be a bit of high pressure, but also equally some quite severe low pressure at times as well. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe. And remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, if you look at the live radar, you can see the big weather fronts associated with Storm Agnes. Now, the centre of the low is now into parts of the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, where we've got this big clump of rainfall around the centre of the low. We'll be able to see the wind gusts, the sustained wind speeds in a minute, and you'll be able to see where there are almost zero wind speeds across parts of the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland at the moment, and that is where the centre of the low is parked. Now, further northwards and eastwards, we've got the weather fronts associated with the storm. The most persistent rain is actually starting to clear, but we've got some heavy convective showers in the bands around the centre of the low, starting to impact parts of the west of England, Wales, Northern England, and Scotland, seeing some very heavy rain at the moment. A lot of this is very squally as well. Now, the far southeast, London, towards Kent, Sussex, Surrey, Essex, these sort of areas, you may have been here today and thought, what storm? It's actually been a relatively warm day because of the nature of low pressure, with winds coming round in an anti-clockwise direction. What it does mean is we've seen southerly flows ahead of this low pressure. And what that meant is we've had fairly humid air. That humid air has aided the development of the low, but equally bring fairly warm and muggy conditions for much of England over the past couple of days. And even today, it was fairly warm and muggy, and the weather fronts really stayed at bay. Yes, some of this rain over here moved through parts of the Midlands and East Anglia, but in this far southeast corner, we've seen very little rain, some upper level cloud, but really hasn't been too bad of a day. But for the further northwards and westwards, it's been pretty abysmal in many areas, with lots of heavy rain moving through, and we can wind it back and have a look at those weather fronts moving through. Some real heavy batches of precipitation around the low, but as I said, we are expecting all impacts to start to diminish in intensity and in their widespread nature as the system fills in and the pressure starts to rise. Now, if we do look at the temperatures, you can see warmer conditions in the far southeast. Now, I'm recording this around 6:30, so we are getting into the evening hours, but still seeing some small areas of orange here, again indicating the muggy feel we have with those southerly winds. We also have a look at cloud. You can see the big hook around Storm Agnes. Now, it was a bit more photogenic when it was further out in the Atlantic, as it now is losing its intensity. When it was going through rapid cyclogenesis, i.e. when the pressure was dropping very quickly, then it had a bit more of a photogenic look. But you can still see the overall hook to the low pressure system, and you can see the centre here across parts of the Republic of Ireland. Now, if you look at the wind speeds, these are not wind gusts, remember, these are the sustained wind speeds in miles per hour. Now, you can see, as I said, the far southeast corner, you'd be thinking, what storm today, as those wind speeds have been virtually non-existent. But further westwards, for Republic of Ireland, parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland, Northern England and Wales, we're seeing sustained winds here with 30, 40 miles per hour, gusts 10, 20, 30 miles per hour higher. As I said, at the moment, those wind gusts are disintegrating away. We're down to sort of 50, 60 miles per hour widely instead of the 70 or 80 earlier today. So impacts, as I said, should be reducing, but you can still see through this Irish Sea corridor where the most severe impacts are. And you can see this area across Northern Ireland and parts of the Republic of Ireland, where very quickly we go from 30, 40 mile per hour sustained winds to 0. And that's because that is where the centre of the low is. Very similar to a hurricane, where the eye of the storm has no wind speeds, no rainfall. It is fairly similar for an Atlantic low. Again, different sort of system, but it's still a low pressure system. And towards the centre, we do see 0 wind speeds and less activity. And that's why this area here is without wind at all. Wind is lower than areas towards the southeast, which are hundreds of miles away from the low pressure system. Now, if we do go to the weather warnings, we've still got extensive warnings issued. We've got rain warnings that was issued early this morning for Northern Ireland. It expires at 8 p.m, so over the next couple of hours. So the impacts shouldn't be, already been seen by the time this video is published. And again, 20 to 30 millimetres. We'll actually go back and have a look at these rainfall totals in a minute. Maybe 40 to 50 millimetres in a few spots. And we've got these rain warnings further northwards that expire later this evening at 3 a.m. for parts of Scotland, large swathe of Scotland and North England. High likelihood lower of the impact matrix, and it was updated early this morning to extend it further eastwards and northwards. Now, if we go to the wind, we can see this expires at 7 a.m, so we've still got almost 12 hours of yellow warning for wind. And you can see it was updated again today as the confidence of the track of Agnes increases. The area of the strongest winds has been refined by trimming out parts of northwest Scotland and also reducing this southern eastern extent across England. So it was trimmed this morning. We didn't see an upgrade to an amber warning. I thought there was the real possibility of seeing that, but of course overnight the models didn't increase the intensity and might have actually reduced it slightly. So didn't see an amber warning, but still did see, as I said, quite severe impacts. 45 to 50 miles per hour widely, 50 to 60 over hills and around coast, and that's what we've seen. And locally 65 to 75, even as high as 80 or 90 in a few spots. Now, I said if we run back to the live radar, we're able to see the past 24-hour precipitation, and you'll be able to see the big regional variabilities with the rainfall for this. The southeast corner, basically 0 rainfall at all from the system. Parts of the Republic of Ireland, Northern England, North Wales, and much of Scotland, dark greens, yellows, and oranges, indicating tens of millimetres of rain. And that's why we've seen the weather warnings issued in these regions, and these have seen the most severe impacts from Storm Agnes. Now, if we go over to net weather, we're actually able to see the current maximum wind gusts. Now, these are the latest wind gusts. If we have a look at the today's top 20, you can see when these did occur from all the way through the early hours of the morning, all the way to 6 p.m. And again, these are not all the weather stations. These are a select number that Net Weather have access to. So, of course, wind gusts will be higher in different spots. You can see Cairngorm, of course, over very high ground, 82 miles per hour. But widely, we saw 50 to 60, maybe up to 70 miles per hour. So pretty much what was expected from the weather warnings. And as I said, coastal areas see locally higher, 75, 80 miles per hour. But again, we don't have a weather station at every single location. So, of course, there will be wind gusts and areas of stronger winds than this that escaped through the cracks. So these are the widespread maximum wind gusts, 50 to 70 miles per hour. But locally, I suspect we saw this a little bit higher. Also, with the minimum air pressure, you can see we've got down to sort of 976 millibars. Now, I have seen, again, can't say this is confirmed, but I've seen some reports we've got down to 967 in a couple of spots for the centre of the low. So a very deep area of low pressure. Again, nothing ridiculous out of this world, but still quite an intense area of low pressure for the UK. And you can see the pressure is still reasonably low, even at the latest observations around the 6 p.m. point. But it will start to rise over the coming hours. And the reason why we're actually seeing the lowest sea level pressure at 6 p.m. is because this is when the system is making the centre of the low is over land, over weather stations. The peak intensity when it was down towards the 960s was when the centre of the low was still out at sea, or just about coming onto southern areas of the Republic of Ireland, and that's why we have much less data for it. So these are the minimum air pressure over land, but it was slightly deeper when it was still just out to sea. But if we do now have a look at the next few days, we'll start on the latest UKV and see what it's showing for the rest of September as we head into October. Now you can see Storm Agnes moving through, and the heavy rain associated with it will slowly clear this evening. Still could see that band of heavy thundery rain clearing northwards and eastwards through this evening, so still need to keep an eye out for that. Again, there could be locally very high wind gusts within that. Could still see 70 or 80 miles per hour in those heavy convective showers. But as we head into tomorrow morning, the strong winds and rain will eventually clear, and through much of tomorrow, for eastern areas, it will be dry. But unfortunately, in the west, we're seeing another approaching area of low pressure. Nowhere near as intense, but going to see some quite heavy rain, and you can see a bit of line convection developing there through Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Now it will progress eastwards through Thursday afternoon and give some quite heavy rain widely through Thursday evening for much of Wales, the Midlands, Northern England into Scotland. Pretty miserable as that clears through. Into Friday, actually looks like a pretty decent day, pretty dry with flat westerly winds, so probably a fresher air mass moving in, but actually a really pleasant day. So much better for all of those areas. We've seen a lot of heavy rain today and strong winds, and we'll probably see more heavy rain through tomorrow. Into Saturday, we're just ahead of this low, approaching low. So for England, Wales, and hopefully most of Scotland, most of Saturday will be dry. Bit of cloud moving in, high level cloud ahead of the low, but Northern Ireland and Republic of Ireland will see heavy rain from the middle of the afternoon, and eventually this low will move in, giving rain for pretty much all areas, maybe apart from the far southeast, where the rain gets squeezed away by high pressure. Into Sunday could see some remnants of cloud and rain, but mostly pretty sunny, dry, and fairly pleasant. Now, if you look at the max temperatures, you can see today in the far southeast, still seeing 21 degrees. So as I said, some of you in London perhaps were thinking, what storm today? But it is very regional. Areas further northwest and westwest got pretty battered through today. Into Thursday, again, temperatures could reach 18 or 19, so slightly cooler because the cold front does sweep through, but only docking off the temperatures by a couple of degrees. Into Friday, again, could see a 19, 20, maybe a 21 in the far southeast. Further north and westwards, pretty cool. Saturday, again, dropping off slightly, but still pretty decent in much of England and Wales. And then finally into Sunday, again, could see a 20, 21, or even a 22. It's actually fairly decent. It's going to be definitely, the country's going to be split in two, really, or the British Isles, sorry, is going to be split in two. Northwards and westwards, it's going to be pretty poor. Still going to rain fairly gusty. Lots of rain around. The far southeast just hanging on to little areas of high pressure or edges of high pressure and warmer air masses. Now we can't see the wind gusts. You can see the strongest winds were out to sea through this morning, but we did see wide it said 60 to 70 miles per hour, peaking at 80, maybe even 90 in a few spots. Those winds will slowly die down through the rest of this evening into the morning, but we can see another batch of relatively strong wind gusts, 40 or 50 miles per hour through tomorrow afternoon, as we do see that area of low pressure move in. But as we approach the weekend, things should slowly get a bit better. Again, stronger winds within the weather front on Saturday night, but mostly it is less gusty out there. Now, if you look at the longer range, starts on the latest GFS. We'll see what that is in store for the next couple of weeks. You can see continued low pressure trying to push in, but by the weekend, high pressure has a good go at trying to build in. But unfortunately, low pressure has other ideas. Instead, low pressure continues to try to push through, and you see a bit of a split here. High pressure in the south, low pressure in the north. And what this will do is it again will continue this quite regional variability with warmer and dry conditions. Nothing ridiculously warm, but generally warmer and drier conditions in the south, and generally cooler and more unsettled conditions in the north. And you can see that with the air masses. Maybe the 5-degree isotherm just drifting into the south. North, we could see the 0-degree isotherm moving at times. Now, into the extended range here, we start to see more low pressure approach from the Atlantic. Could even see southerly winds, which could actually bring some really warm, hot air ahead, but it could actually rapidly deepen these areas of low pressure. So we have to keep a very close eye on it. And right towards the end of the run, a really deep area of low pressure with some very strong winds for northern areas develops here. A proper North Atlantic low with bitterly cold Arctic air feeding into the northern edge of this. You can see the -10 isotherm feeding into this low, so a proper, almost winter-like storm, giving really quite horrible conditions as we progress into the middle of October. Now, Interestingly, if we just look at the 6 o'clock run, you can see similarly into the longer term, another very intense area of low pressure develops here around the 300 hours. So there's a possibility things could remain very stormy over the next couple of weeks. Yes, a bit of a respite perhaps this weekend and into next week, and there will be some variable high pressure around, but still signs of low pressure and generally quite stormy conditions are possible. Now, if you look at the GM, again, pretty similar over the next couple of days, high pressure trying to build in for southern and eastern areas, and again a split of low pressure developing in the north, high pressure in the south, and towards day 10 we're kind of seeing that high pressure drift away and more Atlantic dominated low pressure moving in. If we see the ECMWF, again high pressure trying to build in this weekend, having a real good go at it, but eventually low pressure pushes through. Again, we see that split of high pressure in the south and the east, low pressure in the north and the west, and that continues all the way to day 10, where again we've got a big split, some very warm, even hot air in the southeast. Further north and west was pretty more warm, muggy, but more low pressure associated with it, so it would be fairly unsettled. Now, to finish the video, if we just look at the ensembles, the latest GFS, which are just loading through, you see generally average to above average for London, and that's what we'd expect, having a look at the latest operational runs. You can also see precipitation is fairly low. It's not zero, as there will be remnants of weather fronts and showers moving in, but nowhere near as high as Glasgow, for example, further northwards. A lot more rainfall and temperatures lower. And just to finish, if we look at the ECMWF, again, pretty similar. High rainfall, more average temperatures for Glasgow, and for London, lower rainfall, not zero, but lower rainfall and more above average temperatures, and even some quite warm, hot air masses in the longer term. Have to keep a close eye on that. But again, as we saw from the ECMWF operational run, it's associated with warm air getting drawn up ahead of a very intense low. So most likely some of those warmest runs will be very unsettled in the longer term as well. So we're going to have to keep a very close eye on that, as we could see more deep lows, maybe even named storms, as we head into October. As I said, thanks for watching. Hope you have enjoyed. Make sure you stay safe through the rest of Storm Agnes, and hopefully you haven't been too impacted by it so far, as the impacts are starting to wind down. So do stay safe out there in the next 12 hours or so before the system clears through tomorrow morning, and then hopefully we have to keep a close eye on the longer range, as things could remain fairly stormy as we head into October. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.